Pacers drop game 2 in Boston. A big Celtics run punishes them. Siakam was not enough. Pacers don't have enough late, and Tyrese Haliburton gets hurt. So much is going wrong for the Pacers. Can they pull this out? What went wrong in this game? The latest on Haliburton. We'll break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Friday. Congrats. You made it through the weekend. Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we're in TD Garden, still in Boston. It's very late. I had to write about Haliburton's injury, and we have a lot to talk about. Pacers drop game 2 to the Celtics within 2 in the third quarter, lose by 16. We're down as much as 20. Ugly game. The Celtics flexing their talent for much of this game. What were they able to do better than they were in game 1? Can the Pacers overcome this? The big story of the game we'll get to in the second segment, because the games are the biggest story in the Eastern Conference Finals. Tyrese Haliburton injured. What happens next? And what else can the Pacers actually do in this series? The Celtics' talent advantage certainly looking extremely strong at this point in the series. We'll start with the game itself. A 110-126 loss for the Pacers in game 2. Fascinating game from a basketball perspective, right? Let me read you some stats about the Pacers. They shot 52.4% in this game. They shot 38% from 3. They got up 16 free throws. They had 12 offensive rebounds. They had 16 turnovers. That's still a lot, but way less than they had in the first game. They had exactly 23 fouls. Again, a lot of numbers that are like, oh, that's pretty good. They made over half their shots. They took care of the ball better. They still got offensive rebounds. Should be in this game. The Celtics shot 53.4%, 1% better. Celtics were 40.5% from 3, a little better. They took 4 more free throws and had 1 more offensive rebound. They had 6 fewer assists, which is extremely significant. Fairly even statistical game. What happened here? Why did the Pacers get crushed by so much? Well, 1, the extra possessions add up in general. 2, the Celtics were better from 3. But here's why, to me, the biggest thing that changed. This is one thing that changed that bleeds into everything the Pacers did poorly in this game. This game was slow. It was a really slow-paced game. I believe it ended up at a pace of under 94, and the Pacers try to keep theirs near 100. Way slower than game 1, way slower than most games the Pacers have played in all playoffs long, and that is really tough for the Pacers to stylistically overcome, right? That is not how they want to play, and it's really tough to kind of get through that and play the way you want. And that's how the Celtics do want to play. They entered this series, this postseason, as, you know, the team with the slowest pace in the playoffs. They're totally good with that. They're great about that. They love it. They're all about it. It works really well. Pacers can't do that as well. They don't look as good. I can't find the exact pace numbers off the top of my head right now because I'm tripping all over myself. But that is significant for the Pacers, and a big part of why they lost this one is it was a very slow-paced game. So what does that actually mean? Why does that matter? You know, because it would be very easy for someone to say their defense stunk, their offense stunk. Those things are true, and I think both of those happened because the game was played at the Celtics speed, right? It was way slower on a per-possession basis. So the Celtics had another huge run. This has been a theme of the series to me, and a big problem for the Pacers, right? 12-0 run in 2 seconds to start game 1, 13-0 run in the third quarter of game 1. Tonight, the big run spanned from the end of the first quarter to the middle of the second, 20-0, as the Celtics went from down 5 to up 15, and then eventually 16 after the Pacers ended that run. Then another big run in the third quarter as the Pacers cut it to 2, and the Celtics were up by 15 before the quarter even ended. That stretch actually featured a few Pacers baskets. It wasn't just a straight-up run, but it was a lengthy, sustained part of good Celtics play. And for a lot of the rest of this game, it was basically an even score. But that doesn't matter, right? In game 1, the Pacers had 40 minutes where they were as good or better than the Celtics, and 8 minutes where they were just so ungodly worse that they lost. Same story again. Why does this keep happening? Because the Celtics' pace is so dominating, and was again in this game, that they have these stretches where, because they're so good on offense and defense, any slippage from the Pacers, the Celtics will pounce on, right? So the stretch in the late first, early second is 20-0. That's dominance on both ends to me, right? And their offense was good in this game in general. The Celtics was. They made their threes. They got them up. They were rolling. But in that span, no matter who the Pacers had out there, it didn't really matter. Siakam ended up saving them from that run, but they subbed back in starters. Haliburton came back in with 3:30 to go in the first quarter. Pacers were actually ahead. They went ahead by 5, and then Sam Hauser scored, and Drew Holiday hit a 3, and like the most random guys started this run after McConnell put the Pacers up 5 again, right? Like a group that's typically been good for the Pacers wasn't good, and then the Celtics just we're like, hey, we're better, and we're going to do everything right. Quick 4-0 run to start the third quarter. Carlisle takes timeout. Celtics score again. 7-0 run. Carlisle makes some subs, right? In comes Myles Turner for Isaiah Jackson. A couple possessions later, in comes Andrew Nembhard and Obi Toppin, right? They're trying to figure it out. Different groups against the Celtics pace. Doesn't matter. They can't score. Jaylen Brown scoring. Jaylen Brown scored 40. Jaylen Brown scored a bunch of points in a row during that stretch to put the Celtics up by 13. Finally, Aaron Nesmith ended it with free throws after over 5 minutes of not scoring to start the second quarter. But, they took a timeout. They changed who was on the floor. They did a lot of stuff. None of it worked, right? They pushed the wrong buttons. The coaching staff didn't push the right buttons to stop the run. The Pacers players didn't play well enough to stop the run, and both ends of the floor were the problem. Two things were the case here. One, the Celtics were just better defensively. They kept the Pacers out of the paint better to me than they did in game one. They offered a ton of resistance there. They have a lot of good individual talent. Siakam can hit his shots and do his thing in the series. Pacers are going to get good looks from 3. It's going to be hard for them to score in the paint. 34 points in the paint. That is dreadful. One of their worst totals, including the regular season of this entire season. And that's a credit to the Celtics, who did a very good job defensively on their matchups. Guard your yard, keep your guy out of the paint. And when they get there, guess what? They're going to run into Al Horford, who's very good positionally in this game. And when he's not getting completely punished by a barrage of 18 Myles Turner first half points, Turner in this game, 8 points, and I think all of them were in the second half. It's a lot easier to stop that. So only 34 points in the paint for the Pacers, which says both two things. That says the Pacers were not good enough getting into the paint and scoring from there. They did a good job passing from there. Tyrese Haliburton, I thought, was moving the ball well early in this game. But that also says a lot about the Celtics defense, that they were keeping them out and forcing the Pacers to settle for tougher shots. And the Pacers shooting percentages, they shot well from 3. They were really good on mid-range and long twos, which is not something you typically would think about relying on for any team, but the Pacers were good at them. Check out their shot chart. I mean, outside the paint twos, they were absolutely money in this game. It's stunning to see all the green in those spots where they typically don't shoot that much. That's what kept them in the game for so long. But when they're cut off from their water, they want to play paint to great. They couldn't do that in this game. That was a huge credit to the Celtics defense. That was a lot better, and a huge detriment to the Pacers offense that wasn't good enough. And even when the coaching staff tried to make changes, they either weren't the right changes or were woefully effective. Everybody deserves some blame for that stretch. That 20-0 run was brutal. The third quarter one was different-ish. The Siakam was balling. I mean, oh my God, was he good? It's such a shame that it'll become such a non-story because of Haliburton's injury and a bunch of other stuff. Siakam hits a 3 with 7:55 to go in the third quarter. It's 68-66. He is 26 at that time. Haliburton assisted it for his 7th assist. Pacers are right back in the game. It feels like a new, refreshed Pacers who have overcome that 20-0 run I just talked about, exactly like game one, where they overcome this run. They're right in it. They can battle the Celtics team. They can do this. They can do it, right? And then they couldn't. The next stretch just completely sunk them. It was 68-66, and then before you snapped your fingers, a minute and 20 seconds later, they were down 4, and then they were down 7, and then they were down 9, and then they were down 11, and that was with 3:44 to go. And the Pacers were scoring in this run. Turner hit a 3. Myles Turner hit another turnaround. Like they actually had some offensive success. TJ McConnell was good when he got in there in the third quarter, although not great throughout the night. But the Pacers couldn't get stops at this stretch, right? The defense really stood out to me in the first Celtics run. In this one, the Celtics offense was what stood out to me. Derek White 3, Jason Tatum dunk, Jaylen Brown 3, O'Shea Brissett, who former Pacer, was terrific in this game. Jaylen Brown again, Peyton Pritchard 3. Everybody looked good. In the third quarter of this game, I thought that was the worst Pacers defensive stretch of this game. The scoreboard says so too. They allowed 36 points in that quarter. So even when the Pacers hit back with their best punch, the Celtics still went on a run. This one would be like, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I can look really quickly, but something like 20-5 is going to be my guess. It was 68-66, and then the quarter ends and it was 93-80. So I wasn't even close, but that's still a significant stretch. That's 25-12, and that puts the game away, right? That put it away. The Pacers were within 3 in the fourth quarter, but it doesn't matter. We'll talk about the fourth quarter later. A lot of people have questions about that and who the Pacers actually put in the game. But these runs from the Celtics are so damning for the Pacers because they really show how good the Celtics are. They can go on a run in so many different ways. Their defense can guide them and force the Pacers to get out of their rhythm and pace and tempo and style. and just destroy them for a stretch. And then their offense can do it at other times when they get into the paint and they're making threes. They have so many good shooters, basically their whole team, that they can get good shots on almost every possession, even without good ball movement or a good set. When they're clicking, they're hard to beat. That's why they won 64 games, right? In the first round, the Pacers played a team that won 2 more regular season games than them. In the second round, they played a team that won 3 more regular season games than them. They can overcome some lackadaisical play in those games. This round, they're playing a team that won 17 more regular season games with them. You cannot have stretches like that, and yet they've had it in the first quarter and third quarter of the first game, and now the second quarter and third quarter of this game. They cannot do that, and the Celtics pace, slowing it down, is why it's happening. The Pacers have to up the tempo. They have to play their way. They have to force the Celtics to speed up, to make mistakes, to be reactive. Talked about that in the Knicks series. That has not been the case at all. Celtics talent is totally dominating and winning this series, and we'll talk about that more as we look at adjustments ahead of Game 3 tomorrow, but we have a lot more big news, big stuff to get to from the Pacers in this game, and we must go now to Tyrese Haliburton. A sore left hamstring exits the game. Yikes. Let's talk about it before we tell you the latest on that, though. Got to tell you guys about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, who have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion with a B professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is simple when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why they are constantly finding ways to make that process way easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making that process even faster and more simple. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. You and yours should be next. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, it's got to be Locked On Celtics. John Corrales breaking it down on the other side of the series as we did our crossover. I'm sure we'll do another one if the series goes long enough. And I can see John right now writing his story for the Boston Sports Journal, and I'm sure his show will be great and have a very similar background in mine because he is 3 rows in front of me in the media section here at TD Garden. And the biggest story for the Pacers coming out of this game, which is a bummer because the game should always be the story this late in the season, and that's why I led with it. But Tyrese Haliburton injury, oof. Just what the East needed, an injury. You know, there haven't been enough in the Eastern Conference in this playoffs. My goodness. Tyrese Haliburton leaves the game. So here, there's a lot here. I will tell you what I saw throughout the game, and then we'll get to what happened. So the first, Tyrese is playing. Things look normal. His stats weren't what you'd like so high, but he was very impactful, and I'll get to that in a second. But for the first quarter, he looked fine, and the Pacers were winning, and he, was a guy that they were paying a lot of attention to. And then I think it happened on a fight for a rebound with Jaylen Brown. I don't know the exact moment, though. It doesn't seem like it was one specific thing. He got hit in the head at one point, and then his chest was hurting. Like he was inbounding right in front of us here on the baseline. And before he got the ball from the ref, he was leaning over and holding his chest with his right hand, which was super peculiar. And I was very interested in why this happened. Is he okay? So at halftime, I was trying to see what he was up to and figure it out, and I couldn't figure anything out. I watched him warm up when he came out, and he wasn't in the first group of guys that come out, but there were only 5 guys in that first group. And then he warmed up and did the normal stuff he does at halftime, but had a couple moments of I don't even know what to call it, frustration. I don't even know but just they were losing, who knows? So I didn't make anything of that. And then he comes out for the second half and he's playing and a couple times grimacing, I suppose. I couldn't see him very well from here, but that was evident on the broadcast. And with 3:44 to go in the third quarter, he walks off to the bench and he goes back to the locker room. And then we learn later, as we never saw him emerge, that he had a left leg injury and would not return. I think we found out right at the start of the fourth quarter. Pacers were down something like 12 at the time. And he'd obviously never returned because they said he wouldn't. And then Woj tweeted that it was a hamstring injury, hamstring soreness, which Rick Carlisle then confirmed after the game. I'll open my story that you can read on si.com/NBA/Pacers, which has all these quotes. But Rick Carlisle told us that it's sore of his left hamstring. He said, we'll know more tomorrow, a.k.a. Friday. So if you're listening, that's today. And then probably even more Saturday. So the reason Friday matters, just to get ahead of this, is they will release an injury report ahead of Game 3 on Friday afternoon. And that's the first time we'll hear about it. Although I presume We'll hear more about it a little before that. We'll see. Either way, that is, what this is. And so, that is what we heard after the game. And Rick said that losing Ty was a big blow. He said he was getting worked on at halftime, and that was the hamstring he was getting worked on, apparently, because I think Chris Mannix and someone else tweeted that he was getting his chest looked at halftime, which is why I brought that up earlier. And then Rick said he was giving all the effort that he could. I haven't talked to him about it directly, so I can't read minds, but it wasn't going well, so the trainers determined they needed to go back and get worked on. Of course, he never returned. And so, full stop, we'll start here. If he has hamstring soreness, and this is the same hamstring that he had the grade 1 strain in back in January, where he missed 10 games and played in that one in the middle, which messed up the timeline, and then he was playing 20 minutes a game for a while, to finish that stretch of recovery. If it's the same one and he can't play the rest of the series, it's almost impossible for me to imagine the Pacers coming back and winning. I mean, he in this game, right, he had 10 points and 8 assists. If you look at that, you just, that's pedestrian. That's not what you expect from a star. He played 28 minutes and had those stats. So if he plays, 36 or 37 with 9 more minutes, he probably would have had, I can't do math fast enough, whatever, 14 and 12, which is fine. 12 assists would have been one of his better playoff games. He's +1, right? The attention he requires still helps so much, even on these games when he's 4 for 8 from the field and 2 for 6 from 3. Obviously he's good. I don't need to explain to you why it's a big deal that he would or wouldn't be playing. If this injury is actually something that causes him to be limited or miss time, it's a huge deal. Massive for the Pacers, right? Andrew Nembhard said after the game, I said, what do you guys have to do if you are missing him to play your game? He said, I think we need to continue to play with pace and move the ball and get in other actions. So first of all, boom, playing with pace. Yes, a must. Going back to what I said in the first segment. But also, too, he said that he believes the team just has to play randomly, right? When they were really early without Haliburton, when they started to struggle, because they had a few games where they looked good and then teams figured out what they were doing and they looked kind of bad for a second. They weren't playing as randomly. They were too set in their actions. It was too obvious, normal, standard pick and roll kind of stuff. And it was easy to defend that. For other teams, they have to find a way to play randomly without him. And McConnell starting kind of changed their fortunes. They got better as time went on. So, here's the thing. They have experience playing without Haliburton for that 10-game stretch. Then they had experience playing with him limited right after that. They'll be ready for whatever it is. That's not to say they'll do well. They'll obviously do worse. But, they'll have a plan. They'll be prepared. Their chances of winning would be much lower without him. Here's the thing. We don't know if it's going to be without him or not. He did walk off the court. I could putting over there. There's videos of that happening in the game. And then we went back to the tunnel. John, our Locked On Celtics host, who's right again in front of me, he was on the Celtics side of the arena, which is relevant because players walk that direction to get to the buses instead of walking the other way because they'd walk through a media section. We'd all see them. But by being on the other side, John saw Tyrese leave the arena and shared that he saw Haliburton limping as he walked out. So if he's limping, and this is actually something that would cause him to be limping for the next week, even 1 week, he might miss the rest of the series, right? It's every other day. So huge problem for the Pacers. Huge deal. My guess would be if he can't play, here's the thing. Rick has shown us in the past that he kind of likes, the bench unit that they have works really well together, and he likes keeping it together if possible. But it's hard to imagine who they would throw in as a starter if they just don't promote TJ McConnell, right? How would they break it up to be Nembhard at the 1 and then the Ben Shepherd at the 2, and then you get Ben Shepherd out quickly for someone else, Jarris, McDermott. McDermott played in the fourth quarter of this game. Perhaps they were exploring what he could do in case they knew they weren't going to have Haliburton. Again, we'll talk about the fourth quarter in the last segment, but a lot of goofiness, and when I didn't know what was happening, playing McDermott made no sense to me. Maybe that we'll see. So if they can't have him, I don't know what they'll do. My choice, if I were in charge, would be just start McConnell in his place, figure out how much McConnell you can get, and try to make him the first sub out, have Nembhard run the show. They have a third point guard who doesn't have to play point guard very much when Haliburton and McConnell are there, but they'll have to rely on that. And the McConnell plus Siakam groups have been good together, right? So we'll see what happens there. If he can play, of course, you just play Haliburton and see how good he can be and play the way you can and try to make sure he can play with as much pace as possible, but that could be hard with an injured hamstring. So devastating for the Pacers. Of course, playoff injuries have been a huge story around the NBA this season, and the Pacers now potentially on the wrong side of that, and crushing in this game. They would have lost either way. to me at least. I mean, they've had big comebacks before. It wasn't like fait accompli or anything, but they were getting crushed, and the Celtics' talent was overwhelming when he left the game. But devastating for the Pacers. We'll see what this is tomorrow, and a huge story, the biggest thing to monitor for them going forward, because Haliburton's a fantastic player. He's All-NBA, for Pete's sake. The very next day, he suffers a brutal injury. We'll know more tomorrow. We'll talk more about it ahead of Game 3 on tomorrow's show. But what I would do is start TJ McConnell and work from there. I would understand the Pacers starting a wing instead and just having Andrew Nembhard run the show to the extent he can, and having the bench unit stay as similar as possible. Maybe they just play 8 or 7 or something, go the Knicks route. It's hard to say what they'll consider, what they won't going forward. Let's wrap this up with some other notes and thoughts from this game. Siakam was sensational. Anybody else? No. The fourth quarter rotation, a lot of fans had questions about that in particular, and other stuff that I think was important to point out to close out today's show. Before we get to any of that, though, got to talk to you guys about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the winning formula for championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Back here on Locked On Pacers in TD Garden. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Check out Locked On NBA next. Hear the latest and greatest from around the association on this game from Friday's show with Wes Goldberg and Adam Mares. JB Bickerstaff getting fired in Cleveland. Interesting one there. Rick Carlisle talked about that before this game. He's the head of the Coaches Association. And plenty more. Looking ahead to Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals as well. Let's finish up talking about Game 2 here for the Pacers. We could talk more about adjustments, other stuff that needs to change, etc., going forward, as the formula has been in this playoffs. And Derek Kramer, who is part of the playoff rotation here, will join us after Game 3 in Indy to talk about Game 3. If the Pacers are down 0-3, is it over? All sorts of stuff like that. Derek's been the best during this postseason. Okay, let's wrap up here. First of all, this will get lost, right? Haliburton's injury is a dominant story. The Pacers being down 2-0 is a dominant story. They lost by 16. They had 2 crushing runs. Lots to talk about. Pascal Siakam was awesome. So freaking good in this game. It sucks that it will not, like his first 2 games of the series really will be lost to history because of the results and what else has gone on. 13 for 17 is insane. He made 13 shots. The next most made by any Pacers player was 6. Ridiculous. He had more than twice any other Pacers output on that end. 13 of the Pacers' 44 made shots, almost a third. Made both of his threes. 5 boards, 2 assists. 28 points. He saved the Pacers late in the second quarter. They were getting smoked just before halftime because of that 20-0 run, and then they were playing much better for most of the second quarter. And with about 2 minutes left until halftime, Jaylen Brown hit a running finger roll. The Pacers called a timeout. They're down 13, 56-43. And we were sitting here at Media Row, Dustin Dopirak and Eric Names covering the Pacers for The Athletic during the series, and we all said, this is huge. This 2 minutes is massive. The Pacers can do well in this stretch. They'll have a chance. And on the first possession, Siakam drives, hits a layup. On the next possession, Siakam fadeaway jumper over to Al Horford. On the next possession, another turnaround fadeaway. And on the final possession, he raced to the rim between 2 defenders and dunked. 8 points in 2 minutes. The Celtics scored just 1 point in that stretch, and it's a 6-point game at halftime. He was incredible. They put Al Horford on him in the second half of Game 1. That wasn't totally new, but he's been crushing that matchup, and I get why the Celtics are trying it. They much more limited because remember, Turner had 18 points in the first half of Game 1. They flipped that matchup. It slowed Turner, and Turner was not as good in this game. But Siakam's just feasting, right? So the Celtics apparently willing to live with this totality of the matchups over what they had in the first half of the first game. But, Siakam crushed it. And then early third, the same thing. They needed him to be great. He had a 3 to cut it to 6 pretty quickly in the half. He had another turnaround fadeaway to cut it to 7. He had another turnaround fadeaway to cut it to 3. He had a 3 to cut it to 2. He had 26 at the time. Before that run, late in the second quarter, my brain is totally gobbledygook right now. He had 8 points. He had 26 with about 7.5 minutes to go in the third. So he scored 18 points in 6 minutes of play. Dominant stretch, kept the Pacers in the game. He was unbelievable. He was working his tail off, and he was great in game 1 too. It stinks that this game will be lost to history. He's been awesome in the series. The Celtics don't really have a good answer for him. I mean, Tatum would be the best one to me. Maybe Jaylen Brown. They have size and speed and can kind of defend him, but he's just kind of wiggled his way past those guys. He's been too fast for Horford. He can shoot over a lot of those guys. The Celtics kind of willing to live with those shots. And like I talked about on the crossover John before the series, he's just going to walk into him if he's given enough space, and he's been drilling them. It has not led to the wins, but Siakam has been awesome. You know who was not awesome in this game? Literally anyone else. He was sensational. Obi Toppin was pretty good in the first half when the Pacers were in the game. He was making shots, but like McConnell struggled from the field in this one, 4 for 10. Shepherd wasn't as impactful as he's been in previous series. I thought Haliburton was impactful, but statistically wasn't there. Myles Turner was 3 for 7. A lot of his impact came in the second half. He also had 4 turnovers. Nesmith is still playing at 125%, where it needs to be 110%. That's leading to some of his errors, even though again he's been fine. He's important on defense, but fouls, turnovers, the likes coming from him. Nembhard was good. I thought Andrew Nembhard was good. He was also +2 in the game. He had half of his shots, only 1 turnover, 5 assists, 16 points. He played a nice game. He's been tasked with some tricky defensive matchups for a player of his height and has done pretty well on him in this series. Outside of him, though, it was just Siakam showing up and making it happen for the Pacers in this game. Someone else is going to have to be great for the Pacers, and maybe that's Haliburton, but like someone else. Turner was great in the first half of the game that they almost won. They had a chance to win. Now that game looks like even more of a missed opportunity. They're going to need a role player, especially if Haliburton can't go. I mean, obviously if Haliburton can't go, but they're going to need a Nesmith, a Nembhard, a McConnell, a Toppin, someone to be awesome for 48 minutes to get a win in the series, because the Celtics have 5-6 guys who are just terrific every second they're out there of every game, and they were in this one. Jaylen Brown, 40 points, tying his playoff career high. So many things, again, that the Pacers probably feel like they could have won. They shot well from the field. They shot well from 3. They cleaned up some turnovers. They had 12 offensive rebounds, but the slow-paced game played into the Celtics' hands. Their star, Jaylen Brown, was unbelievable. Adding to the Pacers' good stuff, they limited Tatum. He had 23 points on 20 shots. He wasn't making his threes, but Derek White was, Drew Holiday was, Peyton Pritchard was. Just a tough one for the Pacers. Last thing here, a lot of people asking about this, and I get why, 100%. And I do not agree with it. Early fourth, Pacers are down 15-ish. They were down. They were probably going to lose either way, like I said. When talking about Haliburton, they were down 15-ish early in the fourth. I think it was as close as 11 at times. Siakam's in to start the fourth. It was Turner, or excuse me, I have the third quarter one up. Turner was not in. Siakam was in to start the fourth. So was Isaiah Jackson, Doug McDermott, TJ McConnell, and I believe Ben Shepherd was the final player on the court at that time. So it was Siakam and 4 bench guys, and the 4th bench guy was Doug McDermott, who hadn't played all series to that point. And again, Siakam scores in the first possession of that quarter, cut it to 11. Like, that's manageable. The Pacers have come back from that before. Tatum hits a 3 on the next possession, then Holiday won right after and got it to 17. And then not long after that, McConnell goes out for Nembhard, and Siakam goes out for Toppin. That was the last time Pascal Siakam would play in this game. Yes, 17 was probably too much for the Pacers to come back from. Yes, they should have tried for much longer. Absolutely should have tried for much longer. At least till the 6 or 5 minute mark, to me, would be what they should have done. See what you can do. If you get it to 8 or 7, you got a chance. That was really early. And a lot of people had questions about why they chose that route. Dustin Dopirak asked Rick Carlisle about it. And you can see his Twitter, or you can watch the full comment on the Pacers YouTube page. But Carlisle basically talked about like kind of experimenting, looking for what he wanted to get from those groups. I'm trying to find the exact quote because I believe Dustin tweeted it. Yeah, he said they weren't giving up, but they wanted to see some guys and thought some other guys, including Siakam, were tired. Look, I will say to the tired point, this was their 4th game in a week, 3 of them in different cities. It's the playoffs. Like, you can't say the tired word in the playoffs. Nesmith did not play in the 4th quarter. Turner didn't play the last 14.5 minutes. Siakam didn't play the last 9.5 minutes. Siakam talked about after the game that he was pissed watching the conference finals from home last year, right? He wanted to be back. And then he's sitting for a bunch of the end of the game. Like that, I get the reasoning. I don't think they were going to win anyway. Like, I get what he's saying when he says that reasoning, I should say. They should have played those guys for more. That was very perplexing to me. Perhaps, again, they were experimenting for a Haliburton-less reality at that time, seeing who they could potentially count on as a 9th guy. Nobody was like a shining star in those moments. They didn't defend well. They scored enough in the 4th quarter to keep up, but That was very perplexing to me. They did give it up, and they lost by 16, and they were down 17 when Siakam came out of the game. So not good enough at the end. Very weird decision. Not what I would have done. A lot of interesting rotational decisions, but perhaps some of those could be ascribed to injuries. I don't know. A lot of stuff I wouldn't have done myself, but they're down 2-0, and they probably wouldn't have won this game anyway, given how well the Celtics are playing. Going forward, if Haliburton can play, and the Pacers are as fully healthy as reasonably can be assumed, they have to find a way to play faster and play their tempo. That has not been happening. That really didn't happen in game 2, and a lot of game 1 it didn't happen. They have to find a way to defend just a tick better. I know it's hard. There's gonna be a hole in their defense out there all the time. They have to be better on that end. Without getting consistent stops, it's very hard to play with pace, and it's hard to win, period. And they have to get someone else going besides Siakam, who's been rolling every game, but everybody else has been inconsistent. Even the guys who had good game 1s to me had one half where they were exceptional and one half where they weren't so good. They need a lot to change to be better in this series. They're down 0-2 for a reason. The Celtics very good. They've come back from down 0-2 in this very playoffs. A lot different scenario now than it was then. They also haven't lost at home since March 18th. We'll see. The Celtics haven't lost on the road in this whole postseason. Something will give on Saturday in Cambridge, and I'll be there. Thank you guys for following along here from Boston. Plenty more to come again tomorrow, talking ahead of game 3 with what we know about Haliburton, adjustments to look out for from game 2 and 1 going forward. Can the Pacers still do this at this stage? Never give up when the Eastern Conference Finals rolls around. And then Saturday night, Derek Kramer's going to join us. If we have time, we'll get a crossover into the Celtics person ahead of game 4 on Monday. Plenty more to come here on the Locked On Pacers podcast with this series. Hope you all enjoyed today's show. You can find me on Twitter at Tony R. East and the show at Locked On Pacers. Hope you all have a great Friday. Enjoy your weekend. I'll be a part of it with many shows, I hope. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.